Hey guys, how's it going? Caprain here. Today I want to give you guys a sponsored Art of Conquest video, which I go over kind of the dynamic between the races and give you guys a pretty good head start on when you guys end up trying the game. If you haven't seen Art of Conquest before, it is basically the mobile and graphically updated version of the strategy kingdom utopia-like games that I was just totally obsessed over in my childhood. I was really happy to be introduced to this game, and I hope you guys feel that same way and end up giving it a try. It is quite free-to-play friendly. All you really have to do is get the first month of Patron, which is $1, and even if you don't get that, if you're on a favorable position on a server, if you have powerful allies or very smart allies, you'll still do absolutely fine. Totally free. Now, the races in Art of Conquest are very interesting, and there's a lot of factors that would lead you to choose one over the other. In the upcoming patch, the Racken race will be available, but the core base 3 races available right now, I think, basically outline what you need to look for when choosing your race. So, give you guys a bit of an update. So I am pretty high power level. I've been the king of my server on Tiamat since the king position has been available. I've just been killing it. I've been playing every single day. I've done every single quest every single time it was up. I'm level 32. I'm striving off of just, my resource production and the little nodes in the game. Our faction, Neferak, has taken over the entire server. We've been ravenous, and that has certainly helped us keep up with the growth rate of the high level of resource requirements. Level 32 is a big one. Cap is 40. We hope to get there in a few months, and at that stage, being maxed out, we should be pretty formidable regardless of who we end up being matched against. So the map is actually the first important thing when choosing your race. This is a new feature in the new Academy updates. As you can see from my updates, even though I haven't completed this one, I believe. So if you max out the garrison training for any unit that you have, every unit in the game has this right now. It gives you a bonus based on where you are fighting. So my scorpions, when I max this out, might not be for a while because wood is a very precious resource, but eventually, and not all of these academy requirements are wood. Sometimes they're gold, sometimes they're elixir, and makes it very easy to get them. So when I am fighting on a desert battlefield, my scorpions have attack power and hit points bonus 20%. That is massive. All of the Lich units in the Academy give you bonus on deserts, and deserts are just clearly visible on the map. The yellow ground is the desert. So basically, all the races are actually pretty well balanced, and if you don't know what to pick, maybe the choice of your starting city, so if you choose Neferak is loaded with desert territory, most likely your faction will have desert territory available for you to move to. Perhaps you should choose Lich as a result of your starting location. Humans start wherever, but humans have this land bonus on forest ground. So you see the green ground. Humans will have a 20% attack and HP bonus option available for every unit through their Academy upgrades. And the Tundra is the bonus for the Dwarves. So if all your friends are starting on Dunwolf and you don't know what race to go, you probably should just go Dwarf, because you will have that bonus on your defensive garrison if your castle is on a tundra area, and if you start in Dunwolf, most likely it will be. And this territory advantage is a pretty big deal both ways. So there are actually a lot of humans. I think the majority of people who play are playing human. So the grasslands, the forest areas, are very, very prized. People will be fighting for them a lot. And if you're not a human on the forest tiles, on one of the forest tiled castles, that might be a problem, because humans who attack you, who have sufficient academy upgrades, will have an advantage against you. And if you're not human, that might be a problem. Lich is probably the second most popular race, and coincidentally, desert is about the second largest landmass, just at I. So it's also pretty important to do that. And that actually puts Dwarf in a very interesting position, because the fewest area of the map is tundra, but also the fewest number of players go Dwarf, even though, again, the races are pretty balanced. If you are a Dwarf on a tundra, there's going to be almost nobody who will be playing Dwarf against you and have any attack advantage when hitting your garrison's castle. So that is a huge deal when it comes to choosing your race. The second big factor is choosing what heroes you have and which ones you choose to stack. So, of course, I've been leveling mine. It'll take you guys months and months and months to even get into the 30s. But if you start the game, I recommend you choose Avalon. If you choose Avalon, you are granted Avril as your secondary hero. And Avalon has a lot of abilities that give bonuses to human units. So he has the ability to summon archers. He has the ability to buff the stats of archers. And remember, archers are a human-only unit. And he has the HP buff, so makes him pretty good with the dwarves, as well as there are quite a number of dwarf units that are humanoid base. The other heroes that you get for free, you get Vega. Vega has an ability that buffs the priestesses. Priestesses are also a human unit. You get Virion. Virion has the ability to buff a lot of humans in many different ways, but also swordsmen. Gazul buffs some Lich units, and Grimm's buff some dwarf units. But as you can see, most of the free heroes in the game buff human units, which is why most people go humans. Now, if you choose to purchase other heroes after the fact, it's certainly not necessary, especially as humans, because humans have very large packs. If you have Avalon, I don't think you need any other heroes, especially because, as human I mean, because you have all those bonuses to your human units. In terms of the races themselves, all the buildings are roughly the same. They have equivalents, but it can be very difficult to switch races later in the game because you already have your armies built up, and your academy upgrades, while they transfer, your units won't transfer. So if you're human and you have, tons and tons of packs of archers, and you have archery bonuses in academy, and you switch to like Lich, your academy bonuses become like Lich based, but you still have those archers. You have to retrain your army. So because of that, it's still pretty important to decide on what race you want to go with in the end game as soon as you start up. In terms of the specifics between the units, one of the most important things in the game is not picking two units that require the same resource. So this is the table that I have. The three rare resources in the game are Mithril, Ruby, and Crystal. These come fairly slowly and are usually the reason why, for instance, if you're human, you probably should not get Spearman and Footman, also because they kind of fit the same role, but more importantly, because they both require Mithril to get silver and gold tier units. And while you get Mithril and Ruby and Crystal fairly slowly, you get them at the same rate. So most powerful strategies will have one of each of the rare resource requiring units. So if you're human, you should pick between Spearmen and Footmen. Spearmen excel against large units, excel against cavalry, the knights. It's a very, very powerful early game unit, but as you move on later into the game, the Virion, the hero that I talked about, the free hero, his buffs towards Footmen gets totally insane. He has the ability to create them on the field, to buff their attack and health, to resurrect the ones that die, even gold tier ones. It's ridiculous. Those footmen get crazy later on in the game. So certainly you might have a disadvantage in the early game going for footmen, but you'll have a late game advantage, in my opinion, if you choose footmen. But you certainly need to choose between the two and not level up the structures of the spearmen. For rubies, you have knights or siege. Knights are probably the most dominant unit for humans, aside from maybe archers. And siege is kind of all the same. There's no distinction between human, dwarf, or lich siege. Knights are very, very strong, but because they conflict with siege, you have to choose whether you'll be a powerful person against other like combat battles, or if you want to be powerful to break walls and break garrisons that have a lot of powerful units on the walls. Speaking of units on the walls, archers I think are tied for first place on the wall units. The archery defense is absolutely ridiculous, and if you are humans, it is very difficult to succeed without getting archers, which makes it a bit difficult to get priests, but not impossible. I have seen some strategies stacking knights and priests, and those are very effective when attacking. Priests act similarly to siege weapons. Siege weapons kill the units on the wall. Priests heal your tank units, taking the damage from the units on the wall when you're attacking someone constantly to kind of negate it out. So there's a lot of interesting strategies with humans, and I certainly recommend humans if you are a new player. Dwarfs, extremely powerful early game. The moment you switch to dwarves, you get those technicians and gunmen, and it's absolutely insane how much more powerful they are than the other available units. Dwarf early game is outstanding. You have the option to get powerful mechs, but mechs, once they die, you can't heal them. So mechs can be a bit of an issue, and you want to be very smart about how you use those. So in the mid to late game, you kind of need to be experienced and pick the battles that you can win. Again, mechs versus siege. I don't think you need siege as dwarf, because in the last column, the crystal column, you see the Rocketeers. The Rocketeers are possibly the best, I think easily the best non-siege weapon siege unit in the game. They throw rockets, they do AoE damage, and they excel at basically plundering. They're very effective against units as you scale them up and get the required academy bonuses. They're really insane. But if you get Rocketeers, it may be difficult to get technicians. So that means you'll have to get other kind of tanks. So again, you have to be a bit smart about how you use those units, because tanks are also permadeaths. Tanks have recently been buffed to fairly respectable levels of damage and work fairly well in the back line, but I wouldn't get too many. Gunmen were also buffed, so I think it's a strong consideration for gunmen. The main issue that Dwarf has is the gunmen, because they are ammo-based units, and the Rocketeers, also ammo-based units, are fairly weak at defending your base. They're fairly weak on your garrison. While they're very good at just slamming your opponent back right at the start, once they run out of ammo, which happens fairly soon throughout the fight, they start doing very little damage. So as a dwarf, it's really important that you have a powerful ally who is not dwarf, preferably human with archers, so you can trade garrisons. Dwarves are possibly the best race on the field on the garrison, but you need that human archer backup on the walls. So having a powerful ally with a human as dwarf is probably one of the most important things. So you got to be a happy-go-lucky friendly dwarf if you're going to survive constant attacks. Lich, the race that I have played, is probably the strongest late game race, but it really struggles to get off the ground in the early game. Those spiders are really weak until you get into the mid-silver tiers, and using a lot of spiders doesn't work that well anymore, because their poisons don't stack. So when a spider does lobs a ball of damage, it has the impact damage and it has the overtime damage. The overtime damage doesn't stack. So if there's two spiders attacking the same target, the poison damage is not double, right? And they recently made the poison damage a much higher percentage of the overall damage, making large spider armies not that powerful. So you actually have to rely heavily on scorpions and, to a decent degree, mummies. Now, the issue with that is scorpions are absolutely ridiculous, possibly the best tank unit in the game, but you need those academy upgrades. We're talking super late game. We're talking, if you've been playing straight for 3 months like I have, my scorpions, they are like invincible. I actually cleared the entire map preparing for this video, getting us some background footage, and I did not lose a single tank scorpions. They survived headshots from gunmen, okay? Gold Scorpion upgraded tanks are the most monstrous units in the game, but you will have to play for months at like very optimal levels to get them to that stage. Mummies are a very interesting unit because in battle, when you kill humanoid units, they resurrect the corpse of the humanoid units into skeleton mages and skeleton melee. Skeleton melee are pretty weak units because they're very susceptible to AoE, but at certain levels, once you get a lot of academy upgrades and once they're like in the teens, the really, really late game, they no longer die to other players' or heroes' effects. And that makes them very strong tanks, but again, very, very late game. Skeleton mages are tied with archers for the best wall unit, but to get skeleton mages requires you to have extra mithril, which you won't have because you need scorpions. So you have to get them through mummies and possibly upgrade the building to upgrade the ones from the mummies into higher tier silver ones for your walls. Mummies are very important for filling up your walls because you keep those units that you slay and resurrect through constant battle, and that lets you fill up your walls, makes you have a very efficient late game strategy. So Lich is all about the late game. Human is all about the new player, free-to-play experience champions, and Dwarf is a bit hipster, but it has its role. Dwarf is considered the best garrison breaker, and because of the territory academy bonuses with tundras, Dwarf might just be one of the hardest garrisons to break. Dwarf is like the stone. So I hope that has some impact on your decision when you end up playing Art of Conquest. When you pick up the game, please use my link below. Helps me out. And yeah, it's really been my passion to play this game over the last few months. I'll keep you guys updated, and we'll see what it takes to reach the end game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.